For some reason, whenever I happen to be sick, it's the days I'm meant to be working. So I don't know when you're going to be watching this, but yeah, it's another video where I'm feeling ill. I feel even worse than I did yesterday, which I didn't think was possible. But anyway, today we're talking about things that make me ill, generally, and that's tech billionaires. So over the last 2 years, we've been covering Elon Musk a lot as he descends into fascism, as he's self-radicalized himself on Twitter, which I've been covering a lot. But also someone who's kind of skirted by, without much controversy recently, and has actually looked good like in comparison, is Mark Zuckerberg. Now, if you remember, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg actually planned to have a cage fight, which is as stupid as it sounds, but even more stupid considering Mark Zuckerberg is like 15 years younger and also is trained in martial arts. So it seems like this wouldn't be like a very fair fight anyway, and Elon, of course, backed out. But this is also part of Mark Zuckerberg going through a rebrand recently, and in one sense it's making him more palatable to the public, because he used to just look like an android. He looked like a robot whenever he'd interact with normal people, and it didn't help that he would wear the same basic thing all the time, and he also had a terrible haircut, which apparently was modelled on the haircut of Roman emperors, and he is obsessed with Roman emperors and kind of wants to be one. But more recently, it seems like he had an experience in Japan which changed his whole style. Now, I can totally relate there with Zuckerberg, because I went to Japan for the first time last year, and I didn't have nice clothes with me because I'd recently done 7 months in Southeast Asia, so I didn't bring most of my nice clothes. Because in England, you dress nicer in relation to the climate, and for most months of the year, it's either mild or cold, right? So I couldn't wear like a lot of my nicer things. Was wearing more like scruffy clothes that I bring with me to sweat in. I get to Japan and everyone is just so fucking fashionable. It just makes me feel terrible about my own fashion sense. Not just in that moment, but overall. And going to Japan definitely made me want to dress better once I got home. And I feel like Zuckerberg went through a similar transformation, but now he's chosen like a new style, oversized tees, hoodies, gold chains over his t-shirts, and a new haircut as well. And I'd be lying if I didn't say he looked better, because he does look better. But under the surface, he's actually getting even worse politically, in that he's going even more right-wing. So I'm going to talk about all of that today. So before I get into the rest of the video, let me give a shout out to today's sponsor, Proton, and their Proton Pass service. Most of us now have so many different accounts online that contain our personal information, with the average person having over 100 accounts. 60% of us reuse passwords across these accounts, making our personal information that much less secure to bad actors. That is where Proton Pass can help protect you. It does all the basics of a password manager, securely storing your logins, auto-filling passwords, and making it easy to share passwords. But it also goes far beyond a standard password manager. Proton Pass has a built-in two-factor authenticator, storing your two-factor codes and automatically filling them in for you when you log in, making that process much faster. Proton Pass also takes extra steps to keep you informed about security breaches. It alerts you to your weak and reused passwords and your accounts that aren't protected by two-factor authentication. It also has dark web monitoring to alert you if your personal data has been compromised by a data leak. Its Proton Sentinel high security program also prevents hackers from getting access to your accounts, even if they do manage to access your passwords. With Proton Pass, your data is encrypted and not accessible to anyone but you, not even Proton. Proton Pass is available for all your browser extensions, mobile and desktop apps, and auto syncs across your devices to make it easy to log in, whether you're on your PC or on your phone. You can use my link in the description to get up to a 60% discount for Proton Pass. Thanks to Proton for sponsoring this video. So I want to jump into Mark Zuckerberg's Instagram to just look at when this rebrand changed. But an article recently just kind of sets the tone for the rest of this video. It's by Business Insider, came out like last week. Just talks about him politically a tiny bit. So, sitting on stage with the host of a popular Silicon Valley podcast in front of 6,000 people, Mark Zuckerberg looked entirely at ease. I was thinking to myself, we might need to book the next one of these things for all the things I'm going to have to apologise for that I'm going to say tonight. Then, just as one of the hosts was about to launch into his first question, he added, "Nah, kidding. I don't apologise anymore." That got a big laugh, but the Facebook founder's tone was rather different than 1 month earlier when he wrote to a Republican committee chairman in the US to reveal how the Biden administration had pushed for his company to censor more posts about COVID-19. "I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we weren't more outspoken about it," adding that his crew had made some choices that we wouldn't make today. A cynic might call that something like an apology. Having once taken a harsh line against COVID misinformation and Trump's election conspiracy theories, Zuckerberg has used his vast personal wealth to fund left-wing causes, but the 40-year-old now says he wants Meta to be non-partisan. He has reportedly abolished Meta's dedicated election integrity team, cut its once regular election year war room, cancelled transparency tools used by journalists to track misinformation, and downranked political content in his app's news feeds. He is also said to have cut back on his philanthropic foundation's political activities. Meanwhile, the New York Times reported last week, and we're going to read through some of this later, that Zuckerberg has called Trump twice to try and patch up their relationship, and has been telling people close to him that his politics are now more libertarian or classical liberal than progressive. So Meta shifting in like an anti-politics direction in the pursuit of more business is something people have been calling out on threads, which I've been using, trying to just post loads of random political shit there, which does get a lot of engagement, but people have said like the whole platform is designed to minimize political information being shared. And yeah, like for all the faults of Facebook, like not allowing American-style COVID-19 misinformation to go absolutely rampant, even though it was everywhere, is probably one of the better things that they did. And now saying that if that was today, I wouldn't have done it. And it shows you all this stuff like his change in politics, him trying to be friends with Trump, him trying to make Meta non-partisan, which really just means anti-left in my opinion. And we all know the conservative movement is going to flourish even more on Facebook. And also, let's not forget, things like the Daily Wire got so massive thanks to Facebook boosting them in the first place, like 10 years ago. So Facebook has always been a hotbed for conservatives, and conservatives have always benefited massively off Mark Zuckerberg, despite him having like a more liberal reputation. So yeah, Mark Zuckerberg is evil. I don't really mind saying that. I think this is an evil person who's dangerous to humanity and has already caused loads of death, suffering, and just rotted people's brains through his ownership of social media. But now I want to talk about the rebrand. So, like I said, he had this old Roman Emperor haircut. And even if we go back to just 1 year ago, literally like a year ago, he still looks like how he's always looked. He's talking about like getting, is this like black eyes from sparring? He's gotten really into his MMA. And if you go through his posts in 2023, here he is training for MMA. And not saying he doesn't look in good shape, but at the same time, I don't know about you, I still think I could beat him in a fight. I'm half joking here, but yeah, he looks like he's in good shape. He's got good training, and then he did his ACL sparring, which, terrible injury, but I do like these pictures, looking very, very sad. Poor Mark Zuckerberg, poor billionaire. Even up until February of this year, he was still sporting like that old haircut, and he was basically looking very, very similar. So this we can classify as Mark Zuckerberg's Roman Emperor haircut era. So this era, unrelatable, Android, everyone thinks he's kind of weird, and now you can see the MMA thing, he's trying to be like more relatable, and he's also a billionaire with loads of time on his hands, so he can pay like professional athletes to train him in fighting. But on the Roman Emperor thing, I just want to talk about this. So this is an interview in 2018 with the New Yorker, or just a profile on him actually generally, and it just says here, when Zuckerberg was a junior in high school, he transferred to Phillips Exeter Academy, where he spent most of his time coding, fencing, and studying Latin. Ancient Rome became a lifelong fascination, first because of the language, and then because of the history. Zuckerberg told me you have all these good and bad and complex figures. I think Augustus is one of the most fascinating. Basically, through a really harsh approach, he established 200 years of world peace, which that assessment sounds like the line from Ultron from Avengers. For non-classics majors, Augustus Caesar, born in 63 BC, staked his claim to power at the age of 18 and turned Rome from a republic into an empire by conquering Egypt, northern Spain, and large parts of Central Europe. He also eliminated political opponents, banished his daughter for promiscuity, and was suspected of arranging the execution of his grandson. What are the trade-offs in that, Zuckerberg said, growing animated. On the one hand, world peace is a long-term goal that people talk about today. 200 years feels unattainable. On the other hand, he said, that didn't come for free, and he had to do certain things. In 2012, Zuckerberg and Chan, his wife, spent their honeymoon in Rome. He later said, my wife was making fun of me, saying she thought there were 3 people on the honeymoon. Me, her, and Augustus. All the photos were different sculptures of Augustus. The couple named their second daughter August, and they named one of their more recent children Aurelia, I think. And yeah, you can see Mark Zuckerberg has the Caesar haircut, which people have brought up for a long, long time. And I made a video, was it like a year ago, when everyone was banging on about the Roman Empire? Being obsessed with the Roman Empire isn't necessarily a red flag, but I think it's more a red flag than a green flag. As someone who, you know, I have a history degree, I love just world history. The history of Europe is about various different groups trying to succeed the Roman Empire and basically call themselves the new Roman Empire or the successor to the Roman Empire. Mark Zuckerberg being fascinated with Augustus and Rome changing from a republic into the Roman Empire and being like this more authoritarian system, and him saying it established world peace is just such a red flag to me in so many ways. First of all, I made a video about Elon Musk loving Dune. This seems like the logic that God Emperor Leto Atreides II uses to justify like a lot of what he does in the Dune books. Although his goal is to create like a libertarian galaxy, at the same time he does achieve peace through complete tyranny for like 3,000 years. To someone like Mark Zuckerberg, that sounds like he thinks that's a good thing. But also, the Roman Empire was not peaceful for 200 years, nor were its territories. And he talks about the world. Rome wasn't the world. Like, it just really, really wasn't. And I'm sure if you could ask most Romans who lived during that time, is this the whole world? They'd say no. Like, they're constantly at war with other powers. They're at war with peoples in the Middle East and Africa and Persians. There is really no semblance of world peace under Augustus or his successors, because the Roman Empire, like many empires, just kept expanding its territories, putting down revolts with people who had legit grievances against it. Yeah, there wasn't really much peace in the Roman Empire. If you're talking about like maybe there was some relative peace in like Rome and the central territories, then whatever. But it's not a good thing with someone with this amount of power to be idolizing a lot of the figures loads of fascists throughout history have idolized and acting like, oh yeah, if I could establish peace for 200 years, even though there's some downsides, wouldn't I want to do it? And what does a libertarian's peace look like? I mean, like I said, if we're relating this to Dune, like I like to relate everything to Dune, it looks like Leto II in The God Emperor of Dune. So yeah, red flag there, but he has seemingly abandoned the haircut. So this year, he went to Japan. Now, I don't know if Mark Zuckerberg has ever been to Japan before. Like, he probably has. But let's just pretend, for the sake of a story, he hasn't. And he went to Japan for the first time, and like so many Westerners, we all think it's the best place ever. And I count myself among that. Like, Tokyo is one of my favorite places I've ever been in my life. I wouldn't call it like life-changing, but I did really enjoy my time there. But when Mark Zuckerberg went to Japan, he literally went and started learning how to make katanas and started practicing with them. And then he posted this picture, which went pretty viral. He's wearing like a coat, which I don't think anyone's seen him wear before. He's got sunglasses on, he's letting his hair grow out a bit, and he's eating a burger in a Japanese McDonald's. And he says, Japanese McDonald's, 10 out of 10. Give these guys a Michelin star. Now, we're seeing the new era of Mark Zuckerberg, but I will say, Japanese McDonald's is nothing special. If we're talking about Korean McDonald's, we're having another conversation. If we're talking about Vietnamese McDonald's in the socialist utopia of Vietnam, we are having a Michelin star conversation, because Vietnamese McDonald's is insanely good, but mainly for its coffee and it's like cake and stuff, right? Because I use Vietnamese coffee, which is by far the best coffee in the world. If you haven't tried it, please go get some right now. So I would say, as someone who's had Korean, Japanese, and Thai McDonald's when I went traveling around Asia just to see what they were like, Japanese McDonald's like ranks lowest among them because the menu variety is really poor. It really is similar to British or American McDonald's, where at least in Korea they have some Korean specific stuff, and in Vietnam have a nice bit of variety, where in Thailand they have loads of like more like Asian style cuisine, like you can get rice and like chicken on the bone in Thai McDonald's. It's clear Japan had changed Mark Zuckerberg. And then throughout the months we see him rehabbing his ACL, and then he's spotted at like a UFC event. And look at what he's wearing here. He's got his new gold chain, an oversized white t-shirt. Long gone is the Caesar haircut, and he's better dressed. And that's the impact Japan has on anyone. Even some egomaniac billionaire was humbled by his visit to Japan. And then you probably saw this video where, again, he's wearing a gold chain, black oversized tee, hair grown out. A lot of people have been like photoshopping this, giving him a beard. And again, yeah, he looks better. And you see him with Green Day wearing like a hoodie. I don't even want to know how much that hoodie costs, despite the fact it looking very normal. And then recently he's at an event showing off some of his new devices that I don't care about. And he's wearing oversized tee, has like Latin inscription on it. And again, hair is grown out. So we're entering the new era of Zuckerberg, where he is more style conscious and trying to deliberately make himself out to be a normal human being, or be a bit of like a meme, be goofy. Like we saw that 4th of July post where he's surfing with an American flag, and I guess he's just trying to say like, oh yeah, I'm athletic, I have skill, I'm funny, and I'm normal, and I'm having my glow up era. And honestly, sadly, it's working, because especially when you got someone like Elon Musk going full on fascist and having like insane meltdowns while he's on Twitter 24/7, right? And just embarrassing himself every single day. Like, how many alt accounts on Twitter does he have, which all praise him all the time? It's so sad. And then you have Mark Zuckerberg looking like he's living his best life on his ranch in Hawaii, surfing around and going to UFC events with his new drip, right? And going to Japan, learning to make katanas. Seems like he's just enjoying the billionaire lifestyle, making him more an aspirational figure. Like, do you want to be like this guy? But don't forget, he's evil. And I say that because I was actually going to make a whole video on this ages ago, and I guess I forgot. Because I was going to talk about Puerto Rico and Hawaii being colonized by tech bros. So there's loads of articles about the extent of this, but Mark Zuckerberg has been buying up loads and loads of land in Hawaii. Obviously, Hawaii is a US state, even though it's so far away from the US, has like nothing to do with the landmass there. But just like the rest of the US, it is built on stolen native land, and some of the poorest people in Hawaii itself are native Hawaiians who have had their land poisoned and stolen by the US government. It's always such a big red flag to me, people who go on holiday to Hawaii, like knowing all the problems just the colonization of Hawaii has caused. But Mark Zuckerberg is the face of tech colonialism in Hawaii. And this article back in 2021, it's gotten way worse, by the way, all the land he owns, but I just thought this one was enlightening. So Mark Zuckerberg adds 110 acres to controversial 1,500 acre Hawaii estate, dropping $17 million for the purchase. His recent purchase comes after two previous acquisitions, a $100 million 750 acre purchase made in late 2014 and a $53 million 600 acre purchase made in March that included a public beach and a working cattle ranch. Zuckerberg's massive estate has been met with criticism and controversy In 2016, he angered his neighbours when he constructed a 6-foot stone wall across his property that blocked easy access to the beach in an attempt to decrease highway and road noise. Then in early 2017, Zuckerberg's lawyers filed lawsuits against hundreds of local Hawaiians who may own an interest in small pockets within his estate boundaries. The quiet title suits are used to clarify the often complicated history of land ownership in the state and can often force owners to auction their land. In certain cases, defendants are even required to pay the legal fees of the plaintiff, in this case, the world's 5th richest man. This is the face of neocolonialism, said Kapua Sproat, a law professor at the University of Hawaii. Even though a forced sale may not physically displace people, it's the last nail in the coffin of separating us from the land. For us native Hawaiians, the land is an ancestor, it's a grandparent, you just don't sell your grandmother. Zuckerberg eventually dropped the suit, saying that he and his wife wanted to make this right and talk with the community and find a better approach, and the pockets of land were eventually sold at an auction. If you actually read about all the land he owns in Hawaii, it's actually insane, and what he's doing on there is pure, like, James Bond villain shit. Do not buy into Zuck's new image, and I hope no one defends, like, neo-colonialism in Hawaii. Just like with America, just because time has passed doesn't mean it's suddenly, like, okay to go and develop on remaining native lands or force them off their lands. Like, we're seeing it in Palestine right now, what Israel are doing and what settlers are doing. That is what happened in America. That's what happened in Hawaii. And just because time has passed doesn't mean, like, you should normalize this stuff because, I don't know, you like going on holiday to Hawaii and propping up this system that, like, hurts so many Hawaiians today and enables people like Zuckerberg. But yeah, he very much still is a supervillain, and that's before even talking about Facebook's terrible impact on the world, him not facing really any consequences. Mark Zuckerberg's company should not be allowed to own Instagram and Facebook and WhatsApp all together. Just shouldn't be allowed. It should be broken up. Things should be nationalized, in my opinion. But yeah, this guy isn't really any better than Elon. It's just that personally, he's more stable than Elon, but they're both, you know, in my opinion, very evil people. Now, Mark Zuckerberg got a good reputation with more liberals because him and his wife basically promised, like kind of like Bill Gates, to give away most of their wealth, to do loads of really good charitable causes through their foundation. But what is so funny about this is although Bill Gates is quite private in terms of like his politics, it's funny reading all this where Mark Zuckerberg basically has been butthurt that he's been brought up in front of Congress a couple times and been grilled. And that's just the extent of it, really. He hasn't really been punished for any of the bad stuff he's done. But this article came out at the end of last month, and it spawned loads of articles commentating on it. But I want to read some of it for you today. So by Theodore Schleifer and Mike Isaac at the New York Times, Mark Zuckerberg is done with politics. And it just goes through like his political evolution, so bear with me, but I thought it was interesting. So it was only a little more than a decade ago that Zuckerberg had few qualms about airing his politics. Earnest and optimistic, perhaps naively so, he rushed onto the national stage to discuss issues he cared about: immigration, social justice, inequality, democracy. He penned columns in national newspapers espousing his views, spun up foundations and philanthropic efforts, and hired hundreds of people to put his vast riches to work on his political goals. This was Zuckerberg in his 20s. Zuckerberg in his 40s is very different. In conversations over the past few years with friends, colleagues, and advisors, Zuckerberg has expressed cynicism about politics after years of bad experiences in Washington. He and others at the top of Meta, the parent company of Facebook, believe that both parties loathe technology and that trying to continue engaging with political causes would only draw further scrutiny to their company. As recently as June at the Allen & Company conference, the summer camp for billionaires in Sun Valley, Idaho, there's a good House of Cards episode about this, Mr. Zuckerberg complained to multiple people about the blowback to Meta that came from the more politically touchy aspects of his philanthropic efforts, and he regretted hiring employees at his charity who tried to push him further to the left on some causes. In short, he was over it. His preference, according to more than a dozen friends, has been to wash his hands of it all. In public, he declined to engage with Washington, except when necessary. In private, he has stopped supporting programs at his philanthropy that could be perceived as partisan, and he's tamped down employee activism at Meta. He's also spoken to Donald Trump in one-on-one telephone calls twice over the summer, a move that some have characterized as an attempt to repair a long-strained relationship. Privately, Zuckerberg now considers his personal politics to be more libertarian. That includes a hostility to regulation that restricts business, an embrace of free markets and globalism, an openness to social justice reforms, but only if that stops short of what he considers far-left progressivism. And Zuckerberg and his wife, Dr. Priscilla Chan, have been privately aghast about what they see as a rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses, including at Harvard. Which, what they actually mean is, they're aghast at, students not being okay with Israel and everything they're doing to Gaza right now, and now Lebanon, and we know Zuckerberg supports Israel, so that's what they're actually mad about. They might see it as some form of anti-Semitism, like many of them do, but we all know like most of these protests have absolutely nothing to do with anti-Jewish sentiment. Going on to the company, inside Meta, Zuckerberg and his team have clamped down on politics. In late 2022, Laurie Gola, Meta's head of human resources, introduced a new internal policy called Community Engagement Expectations, according to a copy of the memo reviewed by the Times. It forbade employees from raising in the workplace issues like racial justice movements and wars. Andrew Bosworth, Meta's chief technology officer, championed the policy and was supported by Zuckerberg. Instead of publicly engaging with Washington, Zuckerberg is repairing relationships behind the scenes. After the Zuckerbucks criticism, Zuckerberg hired Brian Baker, a prominent Republican strategist, to improve his positioning with right-wing media and Republican officials. In the lead-up to November's election, Mr. Baker has emphasized to Mr. Trump and his top aides that Zuckerberg has no plans to make similar donations to previous elections in supporting of democratic causes. It always amazes me how like fragile the ego of some of the most powerful men in the world are. Like how much people like Zuckerberg and Elon Musk kind of are idealistic when they're younger and then turn into like fascists when they enter their 40s and 50s because leftists are mean to them and they don't like being held accountable. Like him talking about deregulation, the government basically hating technology. And obviously the US government is one of the worst governments in the entire world, of the most evil nation state in the entire world, in my opinion. At the same time, there are still some checks and balances on people like Mark Zuckerberg, which should be in place. And it's just so telling. They're like, oh my God, the government hates technology because it won't let me do what I absolutely want 24/7, even though it lets me do what I want most of the time, and I've never been held accountable for any of the bad things I've done. He's still mad about that because they just want absolute power. That's why the Roman Emperor thing is so concerning. And like many of us have always said, capitalists, even if they are more liberally inclined, will always side with fascists when times get hard, when there is political uncertainty, when the country is divided, when there are more radical elements forming in terms of like on the left wing who oppose the status quo and oppose the rise of fascism. Capitalists get jumpy and they're like, who will help me maintain my power? Who will keep me in the money the most? Oh, it's the Republicans this time. I'll put my money into them. And even with the Democrats, like I won't be surprised if he has very nice things to say about Kamala Harris if she wins the election, because the Overton window has shifted so much. Basically, the whole election is being run on who can be the biggest fascist. Like all this stuff about immigration and the border, who can support Israel the most. Did you see the vice president debate the other day? Like a lot of the shit they're saying is trying to outdo each other on, oh yeah, who's the most anti-migrant and who's the most pro-Israel. It's just insane. So Zuckerberg might feel like some Democrats bow down to the left, but it's pretty clear they don't. So he's just going to go whichever way the wind blows, and he might be personally now a libertarian because he's creating like his own fucking settlement in Hawaii that's absolutely huge, and he doesn't want anyone putting laws on it, like many billionaires have attempted similar things in the past, especially on, you know, ranches in America. So that is it for the video. Don't be fooled by old Zuck's rebrand. It might put a more human face on the android that is Zuckerberg, but yeah, he's getting worse, and he was already really bad, so just keep that in mind. That is it for the video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments, and if you made it this far, thank you for watching.